I'm on a diet, or I began dieting several weeks ago. Dinners are pretty much all the same. I sit there staring at the abundance of healthy broccoli on my plate, and I begin to imagine myself eating a huge slice of pepperoni pizza with extra cheese instead. To be fair, my meals haven't been unsatisfying. They've been quite good. Yet, nothing quite compares to a delicious slice of pizza or a juicy cheeseburger. If there were no repercussions or dire consequences, I'd probably eat pizza and cheeseburgers all day, every day. But I can't. In a similar way, Robert Nozick, writing in his 1974 book, Anarchy, State, and Utopia, asks us to consider a thought experiment. Imagine a machine that can perfectly simulate any experience you desire. Once plugged in, you won't know that it's a simulation. You'll feel and believe everything is real. The machine can give you a real life filled with endless pleasure, success, adventure, love, and of course, pizza. The twist is that there is no coming out of it once you're in it. If this description is giving you Matrix vibes, then you're right. So, would you plug it in? Nozick argues that most wouldn't. He submits 3 reasons. First, he argues that people would have a greater desire for authenticity than pleasure. He writes, "We want to do certain things and not just have the experience of doing them. We want to be a certain way, to be a certain sort of person. Someone floating in a tank is an indeterminate blob." Second, Nozick argues that we value our connection to reality over connection to a simulated experience. He writes this: "Plugging into the machine is leaving the real world behind and losing touch with what is real. Even if the experiences are wonderful, they're not real. We care that our actions have genuine effects in the world, not just in simulated ones." Lastly, Nozick argues that every person values living a life beyond just pleasure. Perhaps what we desire, Nozick says, is to live our lives in contact with reality. This clarifies what we intuitively know, that something matters beyond how life feels from the inside. The fundamental argument surrounding Nozick's thought experiment is whether or not a life of pleasure or hedonism is worth living. Ultimately, as we just saw, Nozick argues that it's not. Our rejection of the experience machine seems to indicate that we intrinsically or internally desire something deeper and more valuable than just a life filled with pleasure. Nozick's focus on the virtue of authenticity echoes back to earlier thinkers like John Stuart Mill and Jean-Paul Sartre. Yet, I feel as though Nozick's experience machine is only a piece of a greater whole. It's only a part of the puzzle in a conversation about pleasure. To see what I mean, I want you to consider a different machine. One day, you receive a mysterious package at your front door. It's a box. Once opened, you discover a giant red button and an envelope. In the envelope is a note explaining what the button does. Quote, "Dear reader, this is the reality machine. Once pressed, anything and everything you desire to do will come true. All you have to do is think it or speak it out loud. You can be the richest person in the world, the most powerful person in the world, the most athletic person in the world. You can be the first person to Mars or see the Earth from atop every mountain peak. You can win a Nobel Peace Prize for curing diseases or bringing back long extinct dinosaurs. Oh, and you can eat whatever you want, including pizza. There are no consequences, no repercussions, no downsides, no hidden agendas, no tricks, no gimmicks, and no simulations. You can do whatever you want with no obstacles. Also, you can leave the machine on for as long as you want. In other words, if you should decide you want to be immortal, you will be. You can leave the button switched on for the rest of time. Or you can switch it off after a day. However, first, the button can only be used once. After it's switched off, it'll disappear. Second, nothing you do will unknowingly or unintentionally hurt or negatively impact others or those you love. And third, once switched off, you can choose for your life to either continue as normal or return to the way it was before the button was switched on. So, would you press the button? Keep in mind, the letter is telling the truth. There are no hidden agendas or secrets of any kind. I'm sure for some of you, it's still a hard pass. However, I wouldn't be surprised if the majority of you have changed your minds. Knowing me, I would probably hit the button and immediately order a pizza with extra cheese and imagine myself aboard a spaceship. What about you? What would be the first thing you would do after hitting the button? The experience machine and the reality machine are obviously similar. However, there are also some obvious differences. For instance, the experience machine creates simulations, whereas the reality machine changes the world around you. The most notable difference, however, is in the risk it involves. With the experience machine, you've left your body at the mercy of someone else in the real world, while the reality machine simply changes reality around you. To be fair, Nozick did mention that one of the reasons people would reject the experience machine is because we value our connection with reality over a simulated experience. However, Nozick's primary point, or the central theme that he argues, is that those who reject the experience machine do so because they value authenticity and real living over pleasure and comfort. Yet, I'm not sure that's the case. The reality machine exposes the primary reason why many would reject the experience machine: risk versus reward. Most are opposed to the experience machine because it leaves our bodies helpless. It's a risk most of us wouldn't take. After all, we can never flip on the machine knowing that we could die at any moment because of some event or mishap in the external world. We're not driven away from it because we want authenticity. We're driven away from it simply because it feels too dangerous. Yet, given the opportunity for something safe, we would choose to hit the button without hesitation, or at least many of us would. This exposes another important distinction: control. You believe you might have control in a simulated reality, but you never really do. You don't have control over the machine itself or over the real world outside of the simulation. With the reality machine, however, you have a much wider degree of control without limitation or simulation. Despite Nozick's conclusion, I would argue that most people would want the experience of pleasure and comfort over authenticity, even if they chose it for a short time. Perhaps the reality machine is more authentic than the lives we're currently living, since in the reality machine we would be living the lives we secretly or intrinsically want to be living. In this case, the question pivots from would you flip on the machine to how long would you stay in it? After all, there is no limit to how long you can stay in the reality machine. You are free to exit at any moment. I do think that for the most part, the majority of people would be interested in experiencing their version of reality for a time, even if it's for no other reason than pure curiosity about what kind of world they would want to create. What about you? What kind of world would you build in the reality machine? More importantly, how long would it be before you pushed the button again and resumed your normal life? Although we don't have access to anything remotely similar to the reality machine, history has had its fair share of people who have come relatively close, such as rulers of empires and dynasties or the wealthiest families and entrepreneurs. One such ruler was King Solomon, who ruled over the nation of Israel in the 10th century BC. Solomon reigned during the most prosperous and wealthy years of Israel. In the book of 1 Kings, God bestows upon Solomon wisdom, wealth, and prosperity, saying, "I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you. nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my decrees and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life. Although far from the reality machine, Solomon had about as close of a life as you could find to it. So, was Solomon forever happy in his world of unending pleasure? No. In fact, he was miserable. Later in his life, Solomon wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, which is a memoir of sorts about his thoughts on life. Solomon writes, "Meaningless, meaningless," says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place where streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. Solomon is getting at something here that I believe we might all realize after spending some time in the reality machine. No matter how comfortable, no matter how pleasurable, no matter how wealthy or prosperous life may be, it will never be enough. Solomon wrote that all streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. In other words, no matter how much we jam into our lives, we will never be satisfied or content with it. We will always be left wanting more. We will always be left feeling just as empty as when we started. Solomon was a man who had just about everything he could have wanted, yet he felt no more fulfilled than when he had nothing. In chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, Solomon specifically talks about pleasure. His conclusion, "And when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun." One of the most valuable lessons that the reality machine, or the experience machine for that matter, could teach us is that nothing will ever truly satisfy us. We yearn for our lives to have value and meaning, just like Solomon. No matter what we could dream of or conjure in the reality machine, it would never suffice to give us what we really want most: worth. Perhaps you've felt that longing before. Perhaps you've been there yourself, wondering what meaning your life will ultimately have. Sure, I can live in a world where I can eat all the pizza I want and sleep all I want, drink all the hot chocolate I want, and fly wherever I want. In the end, however, what worth is it all? It feels empty. It feels as though we're searching for something and we're not quite sure which rock it's hiding under. I imagine many of you would last a good while in the reality machine. However, I'm confident that most would return at some point. Whether it takes us 1 year or 100, we'll begin yearning for a real life at some point. We'll have lived all of the lives we could have ever wanted, only to realize that we still feel restless. So what was Solomon's conclusion? Did he just end his book in angst? Well, no. For Solomon, there was only one answer to life. He writes this: "Now all has been heard. Here is the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind." Solomon discovered that there was only one life worth living, one that was lived for something greater than himself. And maybe that's the real takeaway. We long for something deeper, something beyond pleasure, beyond comfort, and beyond control. Even in a world where we can craft every perfect experience or achieve every dream, we find ourselves coming back to the same questions that Solomon wrestled with. True fulfillment doesn't seem to lie in having everything we could ever want. It's found in living a life beyond ourselves and for the one who has created us in the first place. Perhaps the emptiness we'd eventually feel in the reality machine serves as a reminder that we're not meant to be gods of our own universes. We're meant to live, to grow, to love, and to connect with all the imperfections and uncertainties that come with it. So maybe the real question isn't how long would you stay in the reality machine? Maybe the question is, what are you doing with the life you're already living?